You got your message notes. I want to invite you to pull those out. Series is called Doing Good. And I was thinking that as a pastor, as your pastor, I have a responsibility to prepare you for the Christmas season. And I think as followers of Jesus Christ, God put us here to spread, as Elf said, a little bit of holiday cheer to the community around us, but real holiday cheer, what it's really all about. And as divided as America is right now, the rhetoric coming from both sides is completely out of hand. I've never seen people so angry and so mad and so divided in my entire life, the way it feels right now. And I'm not taking a side because I think both sides are wrong right now. I think both sides are way out of hand and just spouting off at the mouth things that they shouldn't be saying. And it's got to stop. It's got to change. And one of the ways that we can be a part of bringing about change is spreading true holiday cheer, God's way. And so the thought for the series is, what would it look like? I want you to think about this. What would it look like if we as a church, not just corporately, but you individually in your personal life, what would it look like if we began to build the very reputation that Jesus Christ himself had? What would it look like if we had the very reputation of Jesus Christ? Now, I'm not talking about what we think about Jesus, because we all have our own idea of who Jesus was or who Jesus is. You know, some of us, we look at him as the great teacher, the prophet, the Son of God, Savior of the world, the healer, the evangelist. We all have our own idea of who Jesus was. But here's the thought. Who was Jesus to the people that knew him best? Who was Jesus to the people that saw him physically on a daily basis? What about the people, what about his best friend Peter? If anybody knew Jesus, I'm saying the Apostle Peter probably had the best vantage point. He spent 3 years with Jesus. He personally listened to him teach, spent one-on-one time with him, ate dinner with him, traveled with him, watched him perform miracles. If anybody knew who Jesus was, it was Peter. Well, in the book of Acts chapter 10, Peter is preaching a message about Jesus, his friend Jesus, after Jesus had went on to sit next to the Father in heaven, left earth. And here's how Peter remembered Jesus. Here's the reputation that Jesus Christ had to one of the people closest to him. Acts 10:38. How God anointed Jesus of Nazareth. Now, if you're new to Christianity, the word anointed can be a little intimidated. The word anointed literally means God put power on him. That's all it means, is God anointed him with power, gave him power to do the work that God called him to do. He anointed Jesus with the Holy Spirit and power. Now, here's what's interesting. So Jesus is anointed with the power of God in his life. He now has the power of God to go change the world. Look at the first thing that Peter says about him. And how Jesus went around doing good. He went around doing good. That's what he was remembered for. That was his reputation. That's what the people closest to him thought about him. Now, what's sad today is that's the last reputation that many Christians have. I think one of the last things that the world sees in the church, one of the last things that we as followers of Jesus are known for in the world that we live in was the very thing Christ himself was known for. And I believe it's one of the reasons we're not making a bigger difference in the world. That we've lost a lot of our credibility and we've lost a lot of our influence and we've lost a lot of our impact is because we are not known for the very thing Christ was known for. We're known for a lot of stuff. We have a lot of reputations out there, some of them good, some of them not so good. Like there is a lot of people who really look at the church negatively. Like we've got the wrong reputation. But if we're going to change the world, we've got to get back to becoming known for the very thing Christ himself was known for, not just as a church corporately, but individually. in your workplace, in your school, in your community, in your neighborhood, if we asked your neighbors to describe you, what would they say about you? What is your reputation to the people closest to you? Well, if we're going to make a change in this world, we got to go back to the reputation of Jesus. So the truth is, to build this reputation, you've got to become the right type of person, because the right type of person builds the right type of reputation. So let me take you to a very famous story in the Bible where Jesus kind of sets the example of what it means to become the right type of person. John chapter 13, it says it was just before the Passover feast, meaning it was Thursday night. It was the Thursday before Good Friday would take place. And Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world. So I want you to get a picture. This is Thursday. Jesus knows what's going to happen on Friday. He knows what he's about to endure. He knows what he's about to go through. He knows that this is his last night of peace. He knows this. And what's so amazing about our Jesus is, with full knowledge of what is about to take place, he's not focused on his own needs. In this moment, he's still focused on the needs of others. So he goes on to say, having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. See, we live in a world today where you hear it a lot, especially in social media and on the news. We just need to love everyone. We just need to love everyone. And you know, that it's great to say. It's good to say we just need to love everyone. And it's even good to feel it, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We've got to show it. We can't just say that we love people. We've got to show that we love people. And so let me give you some context. They're going into dinner this Thursday night. This is where he institutes communion, and he has this Passover ceremony with his disciples. Now, the thing about dinners during this time period is the dinner table was literally inches off of the ground. And they wouldn't sit in chairs at tables like we sit at chairs and tables. They would recline on the ground. That's why the Bible would often say they reclined at the table. There would be like pillows or mats around the table. The table was inches off the ground, and you would lay on your side as you ate dinner, which really helps us understand why having a foot washer was so important, because you're sitting having dinner, and you've got the guy next to you, feet in your face while you're trying to eat. And remember, they didn't have shoes and socks. They're wearing sandals out there in dusty, dirty roads all day long. Their feet stink. They're nasty. They're ugly. They're gross. And you're trying to enjoy dinner, and you got this guy's feet right in your face. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster if you don't have a foot washer. So that's why the foot washer was such an important role during these dinners. But now there's some tension in the room because the disciples planned everything, but somebody forgot to schedule the foot washer. And can I say the foot washer is the worst job to have? I mean, that is the most disgusting, nobody wanted to be. It was the lowest caste of society were the foot washers. It was the slaves and the servants who were assigned to wash people's feet, because no one wanted to get up there with the toe cheese and, start scrubbing around, it's disgusting, right? I mean, it's just nasty. And the disciples are so self-centered, they're not even thinking about it. Like, no one is even stepping to action. You got them over in the corner arguing about who's going to be greatest in the kingdom of heaven and who's going to sit on your left hand and who's going to sit on your right hand. And so they're arguing about this, and Jesus does the unthinkable. And he shocks everyone in the room. And we read this, and we really don't feel how shocking this would have been for the master, the teacher, the one who performed all these miracles, to stoop down with a bowl of water and do what nobody wanted to do. He was the last person that should. And he begins to wash the disciples' feet. And after he washes their feet, he says, now that I have washed your feet. And again, this was shocking. Even Peter said, you can't wash my feet, Jesus. And Peter said, Jesus said, if I don't wash your feet, you can't have any part of me. And then Jesus says, now that I have done this, in other words, if it's not beneath Jesus, it shouldn't be beneath you. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. And he basically sets a precedent for those of us that have given our lives to Jesus. For those of us that want to be followers of Jesus Christ, that want him to be the Lord of our life, that have surrendered ourselves to him, that we are to do what he has done. He says, you will do what I have done. But what I love about Jesus, what's amazing about God, is inside every act of obedience, he always hides a blessing. He never asks you to just do something just because, like do it just because it's right. And honestly, if he said do it just because, we need to do it because he's God. He gets that privilege to just kind of set the rules. But inside of every act of obedience, he always hides a blessing. And so he goes on to say, now that you know these things, now that I've taught you how to serve one another and take the lowest position and do what I have done for you, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Now, the New Testament of our Bible is written in the ancient Greek language. This word blessed in the Greek language literally translated as happy. Now, the translators didn't use the word happy because we don't really understand. We think happy, haha. This actually means deep down joy. If you learn to serve, if you learn to give your lives for others, you will experience a deep down joy that nothing in this world can take away. You want holiday cheer? This is how you get it. This is how you find that blessing, that deep down fulfillment. And so Jesus introduces to us one of the most important concepts of our life, and that's Christians are servants. If you've signed up to follow Jesus, if you've given your life to him, if you've made him the Lord, you have signed up to follow him, meaning to be a servant. Now, one of the things you need to know about the Greek language is the Greek language is one of the most descriptive languages in the world. The Hebrew and Greek, it makes total sense to me why God chose Hebrew and Greek for the Old Testament and New Testament. They're so much more descriptive than the English language. In the English language, we have one word that we can use like all over the place, where the Greeks would have 5 or 6 different words for one word in English. Like the word love, the Greeks would have 5 different words for the word love. We just have the word love. So we say, I love my car and I love my wife. Hopefully you don't feel the same about both. But in the Greek language, they would actually have a different word to describe their car than they would use to describe their wife. It's just more descriptive. The same is true with this word servant in the Greek language. In the New Testament, when it talks about being a servant, there's actually 7 different Greek words for what it means to be a servant. I'm just going to give you 3 of them today because I want to help you understand what Jesus wants us to look like, what he wants Christians to be like. The first Greek word we're going to look at for the word servant is the Greek word doulos. The Greek word doulos, literally translated, is bond servant. And I'll explain the difference between a servant and a bond servant in a moment. But let me show you where Jesus uses this word in Mark chapter 9. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and he said, anyone who wants to be first must be the very last, and the doulos, the bond servant of all. In some translations, it'll actually use the word slave there. They must be the slave of all. Now, the problem with the word slave is we don't understand what it means because we filter our interpretation of that word through our society and our understanding, primarily the 1800s slave trade. But that's not what a slave was in Bible times. So when you hear Paul talking about slaves and talking about it wasn't the same. Slavery in this time period was actually a business transaction. If you wanted to start a business and you needed a loan, they didn't have banks that would lend you money. You would go to a wealthy person and you would say, hey, I need a loan to start a business. I'll work for you as a slave for a set period of time if you will loan me the money or give me the money to start a business. And they actually had a law that you could not keep a slave more than 7 years. So the max you could serve somebody as a slave was a 7-year period. But again, it was to either pay off a debt or to receive some type of loan for you to start a business or do something with your family in life. That's the understanding of slavery in this context. And you need to understand that to understand the word doulos or bondservant. So what would take place is at the end of 7 years or at the end of the agreed upon time that you worked for your master or your boss, your employer, what would happen is some of these servants or slaves would go to their boss and say, you know what? I don't want to leave you. You have taken such good care of me, and you've taken care of my family, and you're such a good person to work for that I'd rather, instead of going and starting my own business, I'd rather just work for you and your business and give you the rest of my life. And what would happen is they would move from a servant status to doulos, a bond servant, which means you are now lifetime committed to this master, this employer, this boss. Powerful for us to understand. And here's the principle of what Jesus is trying to say. It's a lifetime commitment. Being a servant is a lifetime commitment. We are giving the rest of our lives to serve when we make a decision to follow Jesus. So I'm saying let's spend the rest of our lives and let's give as much, do as much, serve as much, use our talent, use our resources to make the biggest difference we can in the lives of people. The second Greek word I want to look at for servant is the Greek word diakonos. Diakonos, literal translation is deacon. Now, if you are new to church, this word deacon really doesn't mean much to you because you've probably never heard about it. But growing up in the South, if you're ever part of the Southern church, you know exactly what deacons were. They were the mean old men who hung out behind the back of the church smoking and yelling at all the kids. Those were the deacons of the church. Some of you went to that church. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's not what diakonos was supposed to be or supposed to mean. So let's look at it in Scripture. Jesus, Matthew 20, whoever wants to become great among you must be your diakonos, deacon, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave or doulos. That's the Greek word doulos there. So twice he uses this word servant, diakonos and doulos. Now, the best word to describe diakonos in the English language is the word waiter in a restaurant. A waiter embodies diakonos because what does a waiter do? A waiter is simply someone who's just attentive to everyone's needs. Do you need a refill? Do you need silverware? What would you like to eat? What can I bring you? What can I do for you? A waiter simply waits on people. And so here's the principle Jesus is showing us. We've got to focus on the needs of others. We focus our life on the needs of others. My pastor who brought me to Christ, Tommy Barnett, coined a popular phrase years ago: find a need and fill it, find a hurt and heal it. That is what we are called to. We are attentive to the people around us. When we drive home today from church into our neighborhood, we're attentive to our neighbors, looking for needs, looking for ways to serve them. When we go to work tomorrow morning, we are attentive to the people we work with, and we're always creatively looking for ways, how can I serve the people around me? This is exactly what our dream team does every weekend around here. And if you serve on the dream team, I want you to know this series is dedicated to you. I thought about you when I wrote all of these messages because you embody this. Every weekend around here, we have people who serve on our dream team, and they're focused on the needs of others. How can we make sure the coffee is right? And how can we make sure people know where to go in the parking lot, and know how to check their children in a kids' church, and get the lights just right, and the words on the screen so people can sing the songs? They're attentive to the needs of others. This is why we give out hundreds of these something extra to show you God loves you cards. And I encourage you to pick up a stack of them today as you leave, because it just helps you. Every time you see it in your wallet, it helps you to think about people around you and how can I use this card to make a difference in somebody's life. Some of you really embody the word diakonos. I thought about you this week. Those of you wearing those stickers today on your shirt, you'll see people with these little red stickers on their shirt. That is diakonos. Those are the people who decided this morning that instead of parking here, they're going to park in our off-site shuttle location. Why? Because they're thinking about others. They're thinking about people who've never been to our church. They're thinking about first-time visitors, wanting them to have a great experience, wanting them to be able to find a parking space. That is the Greek word diakonos. The last Greek word I'm going to look at is the Greek word huperetes. Huperetes, literally translated as under rower. Under rower is the word huperetes. I'll explain that to you in a moment. Let me show you where this is used. This is where the Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 26 is quoting Jesus. Jesus earlier knocked Paul off of his horse when his name was Saul, blinded him with a light, spoke to him, told him, you're going to give the rest of your life to work for me. Paul is reciting this story to King Agrippa. And here's where the word is used. This is Jesus speaking to Paul. Now get up and stand on your feet. I have appeared to you to appoint you as a huperetes, an under rower, a servant, and as a witness of what you have seen and will see of me. So what is an under rower? Well, if you've ever seen the original Ben-Hur movie with Charlton Heston, the under rowers were the people in the bottom of the boat. They were literally slaves who spent their life in the bottom of the boat rowing these ships. There was no windows. They had no idea where they were going. There was the guy on the drummer, remember, and he would determine the speed through the beat of the drum or what direction they would go, forward, backward, but they would spend their life in the bottom of these ships, rowing, never knowing where they were going, never being able to see out, just being told what to do. They were producing all of the manpower to move these ships along the water, yet nobody even knew what their faces looked like. They were completely anonymous. So what is the principle of what Jesus is trying to say here? The principle is magnify Jesus, not me. It's not about me. What I do with my time, what I do with my energy, what I do with my giving is not about me. It's all about Jesus. I don't do it for my own recognition. I don't do it so people pat me on the back. I don't do it so that I'm recognized for what I've done. I do it all for the glory of Jesus. And everything around here is about Jesus. I'm telling you right now, this church is not about Aaron Jayne. This church is not about even Coastline Church. Our name means nothing. It's the name of Jesus that means absolutely everything. We are here for one reason, and that is to make Jesus famous in our community. It is all about, we are under rowers. We are under rowers. It's not for our recognition. So let me sum it up in this phrase. To be like Jesus, to follow him, to build his reputation, we make a lifetime commitment to serve people's needs in such a way that magnifies Jesus, not ourselves. And this is so important. I teach you this because this is what the Bible says we are to look like. If you want to know what a follower of Jesus Christ is supposed to look like, it's summed up in this statement. This is what Jesus himself looked like. We are called to have the heart of a servant, to have the very heart of Christ, his nature to serve and to give of ourselves to people around us. To have the heart of a servant, you're going to have to make 3 decisions. 3 decisions you'll have to make to be this type of person. Let me close with these 3 decisions. First one is a servant puts service over status. A servant puts the service over the status or the recognition. I see that every week around here. I see people who in their career field are revered. In their career field are very accomplished, have incredible status, yet come here on the weekend and gladly and willingly, with a want-to attitude, not a have-to attitude, will serve coffee and clean up a bathroom and pick up trash and direct traffic in a parking lot and take care of children so that parents visiting our church can enjoy a service like this without having to worry about whether or not their kids are safe. Every week, people putting service over status, giving of themselves to make a difference. And for many of them, because I've talked to them, they look at it as the most rewarding work they do every week. And I know some of them. I look at their careers and what they're accomplishing and the people who respect them and look up to them, and to hear them say, no, honestly, what I do here means more. And here's why they say that. What we do every weekend as a team, is making an eternal difference. Think about it like this. What else did you do this week? Like, think back of everything you did this week. What else did you do this week that's really going to matter 10 million years from today? Honestly, not a whole lot. But what we do for him, for his glory, in his name, makes a difference, not just for our lifetime, but makes a difference for lifetimes to come. Now, why is this so important? Because with every single one of us, if we leave ourselves simply to ourselves, we will only take care of ourselves. Because inside of every single human being, including me, there is a gravitational pull towards selfishness. Where if you leave me alone long enough, I will only think about me. I will only think about my needs. And that's why we constantly have to remind ourselves, it's not about me, it's about Jesus. Paul put it like this: do nothing out of selfish ambition. So it's not about you, it's about him. Or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. See, that's what humility is. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is simply thinking of yourself less. That's what humility is, putting others first. And how many know the world could use a little bit of that right now? With how angry everything is. If we just, doesn't mean you have to agree with what they believe, but we got to value people. We got to value others above ourselves. And if you want to make a difference, this is the quickest way to make a difference. Because I'm telling you right now, you're not going to argue people to change their beliefs. Your debating skills is not changing anyone's beliefs. And let me just take it a step further at risk of offending a bunch of you. Your political positions on Facebook aren't giving anybody an epiphany. Nobody is looking at your post thinking, I was wrong. It's not working. But I'm telling you, if you want to change people's beliefs, build the reputation of Christ. Do good with your life. Because what will happen is you'll put yourself in a position where people will want to know, why do you think that way? Why do you live that way? Why are you so different? It's our actions that speak louder than our words. Paul goes on to say, not looking to your own interests, but to each of you to the interests of others. Here's the second decision we need to make. A servant puts character over comfort. I'm telling you right now, if you're going to build the reputation of Jesus, if you're going to live the way Christ lived, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to do things that don't feel good at times. But we say this a lot around here. God is more interested in your character than your comfort. I met with someone not too long ago who is trying to justify a sin to me, like a way they wanted to live their life. And here's what they said. Well, God just wants me happy. No, he doesn't. He wants you holy. There's a big difference. I mean, can you imagine if I parented that way? Oh, son, what would make you happy? Well, Dad, I just want to sleep in today and not go to school anymore. Well, no. It's like, get out of bed, get up. You're going to school. You're going to do well in class because I'm working on your character and trying to set you up for your future. I tell you, as a parent, we're not concerned about their happiness. We're concerned about their development. Jesus told a story to illustrate this in Luke 10. He said, there was once a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, and on the way he was attacked by robbers. They took his clothes, beat him up, and went off, leaving him half dead. Well, luckily, a priest was on his way. Well, thank God, a priest, the pastor, is showing up. Help has arrived. But when he saw him, he angled across to the other side, ignored the man. Then a Levite, a religious person, showed up. Again, help has arrived, but he also avoided the injured man. So the two people who should have helped him ignored the man. Then a Samaritan. Now this would have shocked people because there was such a racial divide between the Samaritans and the Jews. They hated each other. You think racism is bad today? Nothing compared to the way it was with the Samaritans and the Jews. They hated each other, despised each other, everything about each other. And Jesus uses a Samaritan traveling down the road, came on him, and when he saw the man's condition, I mean, this is a man who looked down on him. This is a man who would have spit on him. This is a man who probably would not have returned the favor. But the Samaritan's heart went out to him. He gave him first aid, disinfecting and bandaging his wounds. Then he lifted him onto his own donkey, led him to an inn, and made the man comfortable. This Samaritan wasn't worried about his own comfort. The Samaritan was actually putting himself in a very uncomfortable situation to make somebody else comfortable. In the morning, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take good care of them. If it costs any more, put it on my bill. I'll pay you on my way back." And then Jesus asked the question, what do you think? What do you think? Which of the 3 became a neighbor to the man that was attacked by the robbers? The one who treated him kindly, the religious scholar responded. Jesus said, "Go and do the same." For the people who don't believe like you, for the people who don't live like you, go and do the same. Martin Luther King Jr. was teaching out of this passage. And he said the problem was the priest and the Levite were asking the wrong question. What Martin Luther King Jr. said is they asked the question, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? What's going to happen to me? And can I tell you, even if you get the answer right, it's still wrong. See, the right question, Martin Luther King said, if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? We've got to do something about it. But you got to see it first. Matthew 14:14, not in your notes, it says, Jesus saw a large crowd and felt compassion for them. If he didn't see it, he wouldn't have felt compassion for them. And one of the interesting things is every time Jesus felt compassion, people got healed. Every time Jesus felt compassion, lives were changed and bettered. But he had to see it. If he didn't see it, he wouldn't have felt it. See, one of the problems we have living in the Western world, it's actually, you can almost consider it a luxury, is we get to control or monitor how much we feel and see. See, we can see as much as we want to see, and we can feel as much as we want to feel, and then when we felt too much or we've seen too much and we start to get a little uncomfortable, we can simply turn the channel. We can turn the page, click the page. See, this is one of the reasons why I try to go to third world situations as often as I can. Try every year. Or Africa or Mexico, somewhere in the world. Because I had an experience about 15, 20 years ago in Africa, in a village, seeing 9 and 10-year-old kids trying to take care of their 2 and 3-year-old brothers and sisters because their parents had died of AIDS and they were sleeping on the street, had nowhere to live, and were trying to fend for their life. Can I tell you, when you see it like that, when you feel it that close, it changes you. I came back different. I have prayed differently. I have given differently. It changed me. That's why one of my dreams is to see every person who's a part of our church family at least one time do an overseas mission trip, because it'll change your life. You'll think differently, live differently, pray differently, give differently after you experience something that close. And then the third and final decision is a servant puts we over me. A servant puts we over me, because they understand I can accomplish more together than I could ever accomplish on my own. That's why everything we do around here, we do in teams. We don't serve on our own, we serve in teams. Reminds me of the famous saying. How many of you have heard this? If you want a job done right, do it. No, do it as a team. We were meant to do life together. If you're looking for an opportunity, join us this Christmas Eve. Just try out the Dream Team one time this Christmas Eve. We'll have so many extra people that we'll know what to do with. Every Christmas Eve, it's like that. And we want every single person who visits our church this Christmas to have a great experience. So join us just for one weekend and see what it's like to be a part of a team and make a difference in the lives of others. Let me show it to you biblically, and then we'll close. Acts chapter 2. All the believers, they did it together. They did it together. They didn't do it individually. They were together. They had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. They were together. And look, I know that there are a lot of people out there that love to hate on big churches. I hear it all the time. Well, that church just got too big for me. And you know what? Some of their reasoning may be justified. But can I tell you, there are massive advantages to being big. And honestly, if you give us a chance, you'll find out we're a lot smaller than you think we are. Because one of the things we're driven by as a church is the larger we become, the smaller we have to become. Because people need connection. But there are massive advantages to being a part of a growing church, to being a part of a big church. I look at the difference we are making today versus the difference we were making 7 years ago. What we have an ability to accomplish today versus what we were accomplishing years ago. That's why it's critical we find a we to be a part of. And it doesn't have to be here. Honestly, there are 7 churches in this community. I know the pastors personally that I would gladly be a part of if this church wasn't here. And so let me just tell you, it doesn't have to be our church, but it needs to be a we somewhere. You need to get yourself with a we of people. You need to find a place where you would gladly give and you will gladly serve and you will gladly be a part of it. Critical for us to make the difference God has called us to make. Let me ask you the question. After the floods that happened in Houston this year, how many of you had the chance to go down to Houston and serve and be a part of the relief effort? The answer, every single one of you did. Every single one of you were there through your giving. We were able to significantly give to the relief efforts of what was taking place in that city. I like to say it like this. I've never personally been to China, but my giving goes to China every single week. A part of my time and energy in life goes to China every single week. And so look, if you're looking for that we, if you're looking for a place to belong, check us out. That's why we do the growth track. This weekend is step 1. We have 4 simple classes where we'll answer every question you need to figure out whether or not this is the right church fit for you. We'll tell you where we're going. We're going to tell you how we're going to get there. We'll tell you where we've been. We talk about how we spend the money. Everything you need to know to make a decision on whether or not this is your we. This is the people that you want to commit to and be a part of. But let me tell you, it needs to be somewhere. If not here, it needs to be somewhere. So let me close with this. As I touched on earlier, we're not going to win the culture war in America through trying to legislate our beliefs on other people. It's not going to happen. Politics has a place, and I firmly believe we need godly Christian men and women in politics. We need people influencing at every aspect of society. But we're not going to win a war imposing our beliefs on others. But we can change America by going back to building the very reputation that Jesus Christ had. How do you think the early church did it? The Christians of the first century and second century overthrew the most powerful empire in the world, the Roman Empire, and they did it without an army. They did it through the reputation of Jesus when you study it. I remember the year before Mother Teresa died. She was speaking at the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C. President Clinton was in office and his entire administration. And I remember Mother Teresa standing on that stage. And she said things that if it was anyone else, they would have protested her. They would have thrown things at her. They would have stood up and walked out. She stood on that stage. She said, an abortion is an abomination before God. I mean, she's saying this in D.C. with all of the politicians there. She said, abortion is a curse upon America. And what was so amazing is not one person protested her. Think about that. Not one person stood up and walked out. Nobody protested her. It didn't even become a scandal in the media the next day. Why? What gave Mother Teresa such authority? Such influence, such ability to be bold and say things that everyone in the audience disagreed with? It was her reputation. She built the reputation of Jesus Christ. You want to change the world, build the reputation of Jesus. You see, when we become known for the very thing that Christ was known for, we have influence again. we can impact the world again. We can change society again. We're not going to change people's beliefs by arguing with them, but we can change their beliefs by loving and serving them. So let's go spread some holiday cheer this season. Would you close your eyes with me? Father, in the name of Jesus, God, we want to give our lives to live the way your Son lived. He set the example. He took the lowliest of positions. He left the glory, the extravagance, the opulence, the luxury of heaven to come live on this little dirt rock. We have no concept of what he had to give up and leave to spend time with us. And even while he was here, he did not live as a king, but he made himself a humble servant. And he told us who follow him, do what I have done, live the way I have lived. So God, we want to build the reputation of Jesus here in this community, in our church, in our lives individually, in our workplaces. Let us be known as the people who go around doing good. People may not know what religion we're a part of or what faith we believe, but let our actions speak louder than our words and put us in positions where people will ask us questions. Why do you live that way? And give us an opportunity to share Jesus in a powerful way. In Jesus' name.